Good morning, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff_2020. And this morning, I'm indulging in one of my Mindfields shows. And what have I been studying this morning? But hang on a second. What have I been studying this morning? But the great Ode to Joy by Beethoven, the lyrics by Schiller, of course. And why? Because it is the theme, I think, if I may be so bold, of the work of Lyndon LaRouche and his wife, Helga Zepp LaRouche, whose Schiller Institute has been very much on my mind lately since I started getting familiar with Harley Schlanger and LaRouche Pack and reading all the great posts at LaRouchePub.com, where the EIR publications are archived, and you can just open up any of them and learn something great. So hey, thanks Tyrone. Yeah, thanks for the super chat, man. I am trying to keep those commercial ads off the channel, by the way, and if I keep them off of there, I think it makes a better production generally, and so that's more important to me than whatever ad revenue I could get from running those ads. But you know, every little bit helps. So thanks again, and welcome everyone. So why am I indulging in joy this morning? Why should I indulge in the rare idea that we could be happy? Happy, wouldn't that be nice? It's hard to be happy when you're afraid, and it's hard to be happy when you are being constrained by government orders. It's hard to be happy if you don't have a sense in your mind and in your soul and in your heart that you are in fact free to go out and enjoy the world and to taste the experience of being a human. I like American Intelligence Media Rose, and sure, if they are interested, I'd be glad to hear from them. Anyway, I was talking about Schiller Institute, and let me show you where I'm going with this. I want to start the show this morning by playing one of those flash mob videos that was produced, a couple years back before there was the lockdown and people could gather in a public space and kind of be frolicsome and happy. Because that's what I want you to, if you would, indulge me and watch this little video. I've cut a couple of minutes off. It's maybe about 4.5 minutes. But listen along to the Ode to Joy by Beethoven as this little flash mob develops. But more importantly, watch the faces. Watch the faces of the people and tell me if you don't think that just from the music alone, just from the fact that these people are together and playing it together, that somehow a magical thing happens and people feel that sense of joy. So let me bring this up here. This is a YouTube that was posted back in 2012. And again, I've skipped the first minute and a half or so. Here we go. Well, what do you think? I'll take it. I think to me that feeling that is seen, you see in the people's faces, in their body movements, in the joy of the children, and the musicians themselves are these are people that have played this music 10,000 times, right? But they are infected as well with this amazing feeling. And look how they're all close together. They've all kind of just found their place, and everyone participated, whether just listening or sawing away on their fiddles. So that, to me, is something worth pursuing in life. And I miss my music. I want to get back to it. The Beethoven was a deep connection between my father, McDuff, and me. Once I asked him who his favorite composer was, and he said Beethoven, and I asked him who his favorite pianist was, and he told me it was Rudolf Serkin. So I had a recording of Rudolf Serkin, which my father got for me on reel-to-reel tape of the second piano concerto in B flat by Beethoven, played by Rudolf Serkin. And whenever I hear that, or a lot of Beethoven, I do think of my dad and how well it fits in with these efforts being made at the Schiller Institute to bring back classical culture. And that is kind of my topic this morning. So let me get back to the other page. Say hello to everyone. Okay, I'm looking at the chat now. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Fantastic. Don't worry, David. The French horns won't get you. Good to have you with us, everybody. And now, here is the theme that I am presenting to you this morning for your consideration. The Belt and Road Project, which we've now been digging into, sorry about that, to understand what's been going on behind the scenes with Warren Buffett, all these investments in nuclear energy, peaceful nuclear energy, they called it PNE, and peaceful nuclear explosions, I guess, was what I was thinking of. But really what we're talking about now are these small nuclear reactors that George Webb has been identifying as going to be powering this new Belt and Road. And we envision the idea of train stations along a many thousand-mile journey from, say, London or Paris or Rotterdam to all the way to the coast of China, Russia, or even Japan, and then beyond Russia across the Bering Strait in an amazing technical leap. We can do that now. We can cross from Russia to Alaska and then extend the whole thing into the Americas and down to the tip of South America, completing a belt and road that has been, the basis of the economy of the world, really, since before Marco Polo made it famous. East Berliners singing spiritual songs in public helped to bring down the Berlin Wall. That I didn't know that, John Wilkins, but that makes sense to me. Corky, yeah. Well, yeah, I'm thinking that we need to bring our instruments out to the Capitol, and start find out what the resonant frequencies are, and see what we can do, because those people in there in that opium dome, as we call it, have got us, trapped. And we need to free our institutions from these interlopers, the ones that work with Wall Street and the City of London, to keep everything in the hands of a small elect few, and the core of which is always going to be the Anglo-Saxon hierarchy from Germany through England and with connections in the Netherlands and elsewhere in Europe. But the main thrust of it is driven by the banks, whether the City of London banks, the Bank of England, or the central banks of Europe. And it appears that all of these forces are working together to maintain control over the economy of the world in accordance with their satanic view. Their satanic view of life is that we are all just mammals that wander around on the earth just like all the other mammals do. We haven't got any particular divine spark in us. We haven't got any reason to be preserved except for to the use of those who are our betters, the betters of us, the nobility, the wealthy merchant class that is treated like nobility, and the actual kings, queens, emperors, dukes, and other rulers of portions of the earth. So, my proposal this morning is that there are two different visions of the Belt and Road. And one of them is this Anglo-Saxon dominance that is going to continue if our present course goes toward Biden and the Democrats and the banks. And as Harley Schlanger points out, it's going to be a banker's dictatorship. There won't be any common law courts. There won't be jury trials. There won't be, any judges that are bound to obey the Constitution, because it's all going to be corporate-driven rulemaking that we simply can obey or violate, depending on whether we want to have social credits or social demerits on our record. Pardon me. So this morning I've been reading of a vision of the New Silk Road, or the Belt and Road, a different vision from that which we've been presented by our studies of the behind-the-scenes finances driven by people like Warren Buffett and those, whoever he works for, those bankers from the Rothschilds to the Citibank to the Federal Reserve, all of them folks that are part of the Anglo-Saxon oligarchy. Well, they've got control over a substantial amount of the earth right now, and the alternative is either chaos, where we, knock all the temples down and, destroy everything to be rebuilt, which is kind of really what they want, right? They want us to do that. Or to find a different way of running what's inevitable, and that is a new Silk Road. And that's why I think the Schiller Institute has a lot of valuable things to say. Let me show you this book that I bought this morning, okay? Sorry, I just got a ding on my phone. Oh, hey, Kathy. Oh, don't worry about that. I'm well aware. Thanks, Kathy. The New Silk Road becomes the world land bridge. And this is volume 2. I haven't seen volume 1, but I went ahead and jumped in and bought this online for $35. It's well worth it. I'm very happy that I spent the money. And if you want to support the Schiller Institute, probably the best thing that you can do is to do a win-win by buying this book, and then you'll have the text. I can't read it all to you. It's very, very long, 400 pages. But I think, and they want, obviously this is a way that they can make a little bit of money to support their work. So if you are in a position to do it, just go ahead and spend the $35, get the PDF format, and download it like I did. Okay, so this is the book, and now I want to go over to the text of the book and read something written by Helga Zepp LaRouche, which I think is very, very important. And this is just in the middle of a longer essay, but it's to my point this morning about classical beauty. I'll say this about my own adventures in music, and that is my great voice teacher, who actually, by the way, David, was a graduate of Indiana University. Lisa K. Fletcher is her name, and she's still teaching. But she started me off with some basic repertory. And as I was working through one of the classical pieces, she looked at me with a kind of a don't you understand this look? And she said, John, whatever you do has to be beautiful. Whatever you sing, however you do it, it has to be beautiful. And that was like, who, me? How could I do anything that's beautiful, you know? But that's the ideal. That's the classical ideal. To do something beautiful, because beauty is what inspires joy. So let me read some of what Mrs. LaRouche has written here. Pardon me a second. Now, this is not specifically about the Belton Road, but the book itself is all about how the Belton Road can be built to the benefit of everybody. And of course, that is the conflict between people that want this Belton Road, which is inevitable. It's going to happen unless there's a war. It's going to happen. Do you want it built for everyone? Or do you just want it built so that certain people can profit and everybody else kind of has to pay their fare, or maybe can't get on it, or has to comply with some rules, or take an injection, or do whatever the controllers tell you to do, or else you won't benefit from it? It's the essential question of can human beings live in peace without being forced to? As I put it a couple of weeks ago, do you want peace or do you want pacification? And that's what the Phoenix program was, pacification. Yeah, dead people are quite pacified. Okay, here's the text. Let me briefly go back to the end of World War II to find the roots of this problem. Franklin D. Roosevelt, in his famous dialogue with Churchill in Casablanca, had pledged the end of colonialism and the help of the United States to develop the developing countries. Churchill, on the other side, said the British did not fight World War II in order to end the British Empire. Now, unfortunately, Roosevelt died at a very inconvenient moment, and Truman, who was a very small man, took over the White House. Remember what Lyndon LaRouche always said when he was in India about how shocked the people were about Roosevelt dying at this point. So Roosevelt, who was allied with the Soviet Union in the Second World War, right, had gone. Churchill stepped into the vacuum, and basically Then he made the famous March 1946 Iron Curtain speech in Fulton, Missouri, launching the Cold War. He proposed a new alliance based on the special relationship between the United States and the British Empire. That speech by Churchill in Fulton shifted the American view on the USSR. Then followed the Truman Doctrine in March 1947, which allowed such atrocities as Senator McCarthy to start a witch hunt in America against everybody suspected of being a communist under every bed. Now, that is what is happening with the anti-Trump witch hunt today. What happened in Europe? Well, this is me now. What happened in Europe after World War II was complete and utter devastation. So with nothing there and a disarmed, poor population, it was free for the powers that won the war to build the society in whatever shape they wanted to. And this is what happened in Europe. What happened in Europe? Recently, there was an amazing article in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung covering an exhibition taking place in Berlin right now on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the scandal erupting about the Congress for Cultural Freedom, the CCF. And this is the important content of this book, of this section this morning. The Congress for Cultural Freedom, which lasted from 1950 until 1967, was the gigantic cultural warfare program by the CIA, with the explicit aim to recruit lefty people, communists, into an anti-Soviet Cold War. They in reality wanted to destroy the axioms in the population which had made Franklin D. Roosevelt possible. Because Wall Street had been completely freaked out about Roosevelt implementing Glass-Steagall, the New Deal, having an alliance with the Soviet Union. So that the moment Truman started in cohesion with the British to have the idea to establish a paradigm shift in the population with a left-liberal outlook, which we have today. This is what the FAZ article, the Frankfurter magazine, said. It said that the CIA did not plan to foster reactionary movements. They have created exactly that left liberal outlook, which is the politically correct view in Europe today. I think that it's really noteworthy to reflect upon, because that is exactly what they did with the Dulles brothers under the command of the High Commissioner John J. McCloy. Remember, High Commissioner for Germany, John J. McCloy, a Rockefeller man. If you look at this operation, which was huge, it involved 35 countries, 20 magazines. They controlled practically every art exhibition and cultural event. In Europe, there were very few writers, poets, musicians, historians, critics, or journalists who were not connected to this project. Some witting, some unwitting. It was part of the Cold War to fight for the liberation of the human mind. The CCF acted like a cartel. They controlled the entire cultural industry and based it on the myth of a freedom-oriented outlook. Remember, the CIA, at the same time, while they pretended to be for freedom, made a coup against Mossadegh, conducted the Bay of Pigs operation, the Phoenix program in Vietnam, and similar things. True, right? So this is something I never knew, and here it is. The Congress for Cultural Freedom, created by the CIA in what, the aftermath of absolute chaos and destruction. And this shows you how important culture is, and how when you talk about mind control on a cultural basis, that you're starting to get into what the CIA likes to do. They like the idea of mind control on an individual basis to make that Manchurian candidate, the assassin, or to make somebody in an official capacity do what they want him to do, like they did to my father. But they also have been working on a general population mind control. And part of that is, as Professor Hamamoto, and I hope we'll talk about it some more tonight, has identified, is a separation of generations so that the youth never understand things that their parents or grandparents understood, and they think that they have their own blank slate in the world to create something new, which is all a false understanding that they, as good-hearted liberal people, fall into. How does that happen? Through the control, mass media, and especially in a place like Europe, which is so deeply in love with its own culture for centuries and still is, I hope. Well, to take it, to warp it, to change it, to destroy the beauty. It was in part funded with money from the Marshall Plan, which was diverted to the CCF, but also altogether 170 foundations. One of their key ideologues, George Kennan, remember? Toto heard me say George Kennan, and immediately she just reacted. I mean, that's the way I am. I have a gut reaction now. When I hear George F. Kennan, I think, uh-oh. All right, here he is. In a speech in front of the National War College in December 1947, developed a strategy of the necessary lie. The necessary lie, of course. That's what we do. We lie by necessity. Oh, I'm so glad to be discovering this stuff, 50 years after I studied it at William & Mary. And it's the same names, but now I see, I just want you to know I can see through your masks. Masters of War. So George Kennan developed the strategy of the necessary lie, which would become an essential part of U.S. foreign policy, laid down in National Security Directive 68, and later another one for psychological warfare operations. There you go. And this is Ewan Cameron and Sidney Gottlieb and Alan Dulles and all those whatever. They're barely human people. This lasted for decades. So the idea of fake news, of manipulating the population with lies, is not new, and it has not erupted only with Trump. The aims of the CCF were very much those of the Frankfurt School. They wanted to destroy idealism, the classical culture. Because Adorno, for example, argued that idealism leads to Nazism, because it leads to a radical view, and that has to be rooted out, both in order to eradicate the remnants of Nazism, but also of the dictatorship of the Soviet Union. Adorno said, for this, we have to eradicate beauty from art completely. Remember that Schiller said that art which is not beautiful is not art. Well, that's what my teacher taught me. And I fully agree with that, because art has to ennoble people and uplift their spirit. And when it's not beautiful, it does not do that. In music, the CCF started a vicious campaign against director Wilhelm Furtwängler, and instead of classical composers, they pushed atonal 12-tone music. Alban Berg, Schoenberg, Weber, and eradicated the idea of polyphonic harmonic composition. That was going on when I was in school, okay? I'm at William & Mary, and I'm taking as much music as I can, so I've taken music theory. And so Paul Hindemith, basically the founder of the 12-tone movement, has written what was then the current text on harmony. And it had 2 volumes, the traditional harmony and then the 12-tone stuff. And traditional harmony, I love it. I really just identified with that. And of course, that's Beethoven and all the great classicals, the 3 Bs. But then I tried to understand the 12-tone stuff, and I just never could get it. The famous writer Susan Sontag said, "We knew we expected to accept ugly music as pleasant." You're expected to accept ugliness as pleasant. That's teaching you to abhor beauty. Isn't that happening, all around us in every single medium that you look at today? Just the fact that people are displayed doing really rude, obnoxious, ugly things, and we're supposed to laugh at that or consider it to be, the worthwhile to watch on our television sets. This is all programmed, cultural, psychological warfare. That's why we have to turn off the TVs. This is what happens when you go to the concerts. The festivals or others, you always have Beethoven, Berg, and then some other modern composer. You can never get a classical concert. They also made a list of allowed writers: Ibsen, Shaw, O'Neill, Wilder, Steinbeck. They forbade certain pieces by Shakespeare and Kleist. They invented the famous Regie Theater, which is the idea that you completely destroy the classical composition of Schiller, Shakespeare, and each modern director can put his own interpretation in it up to the point where you cannot recognize these pieces anymore. One of my singing colleagues told me about having to be in a production in which it was in Germany. I can't remember which the opera was, but the idea was that they had changed the scene into a kind of a sexual orgiastic thing, and everybody, all the actors and singers, were doing just things you wouldn't want to do in public. That's part of it. A big role was played by the Museum of Modern Art in New York, which promoted the modern painting, Cubism, Futurism, Dadaism, Expressionism, abstract art, Surrealism, and so forth. A writer called Eva Cockcroft wrote in the Art Forum magazine, quote, "The abstract expressionism was a weapon of the Cold War," unquote. The connection between the Cold War and this expressionism was absolutely no coincidence, because it was supposed to destroy the ability of the mind to understand anything, dumbing us down. Harry Truman, of all people, liked to go to the National Art Gallery in the United States looking at Holbein and Rembrandt. He said, "What a pure pleasure, and what a difference to our modern Schmierfinken, our mucky pups." Now, I don't know what the definition of Schmierfinken is, but it sounds pretty nasty. Maybe somebody can fill that in. So the CCF influence did not end in 1967. It ended then. It came out with a big scandal, but it is working until the present. That is why people have this left liberal ideology today. This is what is behind the interventionist policy, the color revolutions, the export of democracy, the right to protect. That is, we need to protect the people of Yemen, for instance, for some reason. This is what the foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov, calls the post-Christian values. Isn't that a heavy thing to think of, that what is going on here is post-Christian values? The Western value, he says, the Western values are no longer those values which were handed down from our grandfathers from generation to generation, but it has been replaced by, quote, everything is allowed, a complete hedonism, where freedom, pardon me, oops, there we go, where freedom is misunderstood as the right of everybody to live out all their pleasures in the here and now. Do whatever you like to do, unquote. That ugliness is what you see when you look at most movies today, at the video games, the art, youth culture, which are all characterized by a cult of ugliness. So, in that sense, the CCF has done a very successful operation. So we do have a big cultural problem in the West. There is a huge drug epidemic in the United States, out-of-control violence, mass shootings in schools almost every week, terrorism. But the good news is that the solution to overcome these problems is readily available. When we founded the Schiller Institute, now more than 33 years ago, we said from the beginning that a just New World economic order must be combined with a renaissance of classical culture. This is actually happening, because with the new Silk Road development being built since 4 years, the world has changed already, and many countries are reviving their classical cultures. This is why the Schiller Institute in all our conferences has always had a conference expressing this dialogue of classical cultures. What we have to build is a completely new set of international relations, where each nation is allowed to celebrate statecraft, meaning making possible the creative potential of all its citizens. Well, this is what I always love the John Adams quote, where he says, I am a soldier, so my son can be an engineer, so his son can be an artist. An interaction among nations which focuses on the best cultural tradition and potential of the other. China is reviving Confucianism and its philosophy of philosophical classical culture in poetry, music, and painting. In Europe, we must absolutely do the same. The ancient Greek classical period, which is what Greece is actually doing, they had recently a conference in essence of the 10 oldest civilizations, and they revived that spirit. In Italy, we have the Golden Renaissance. In Spain, the Andalusian Renaissance and other great thinkers. In France, you have the tradition of Jeanne d'Arc. The École Polytechnique in Germany, you have the tremendous wealth of philosophers, composers, and poets, Schiller and Beethoven. In America, we have the American Constitution, the American system of economy. All these treasures are there and just need to be revived. If we undo what the CCF did and revive the classical culture of all nations and enter into a beautiful dialogue among them, mankind will experience a new renaissance and unleash an enormous creativity of the human species like never before. So it is very good to live at this moment in history and contribute to make the world a better place. And it can be done, because the new paradigm corresponds to the lawfulness of the physical universe in science, classical art, and these principles. Neoliberalism and the left liberalism are just as outdated and will disappear like the scholastics debating how many angels can sit on the top of a pen. What will be asserted is the identity of the human species as the creative species in the universe. Well, that's a hopeful ideal, and I think that if you want to learn more about this alternate way to look at the new Silk Road, experience the Schiller Institute's website and consider picking up a copy of this book. 400 pages. I've just read the introduction so far, so it's but it's a treasure, and so are all the folks associated with LaRouche Pack. Thinking it's finches, huh? Okay. Well, that's it. If you're a humanist, if you love humanity, then you love Chinese humans as much as you love Caucasian humans, whatever Caucasian means. And we love each other, like Bob Marley says. There's one love, and that's the other theme that you see in this positive, good Silk Road idea, is that it is building a one love world where we all will, have that cultural background, the understanding of the the value of the human mind as ability to think, to reason, to put things together, and to improve life, not to destroy it. Thanks very much. I'll see you guys tonight with the trio, Professor Hamamoto, George Webb, and myself, and we'll go from there. Have a great day.